In this last part of the uh, lecture series on sequences, we will be discussing monotone sequences, then prove nested interval theorem, and finally discuss a little bit about Cauchy sequences. So let us begin with the definition of what are called the monotone sequences. So monotone generally means in English boring or static behavior, you could say. So boring is not quite the point here, but the behavior remains the same throughout is what is the meaning when we talk about monotone sequences. So if your sequence xn is such that xn is less than or equal to xn plus 1 for all positive integers n, then you see that nowhere is a decrease occurring. If you look at the first term, then x1 and the second term x2 is necessarily greater than equal to x1. So x1 would be less than or equal to x2, that would be less than or equal to x3, x3 will be less than or equal to x4, and so on. So at any stage, nth stage, the nth term will be less than or equal to xn plus 1. If such a thing happens, then we say that the sequence is monotonically increasing. Actually, to be more precise, it is a monotonically non-decreasing, since there can be an equality here. But what we do is that instead of using this long phrase, we just say that the sequence is monotonically increasing if xn is less than or equal to xn plus 1, and we say that it is strictly monotone increasing if xn is less than xn plus 1 for all n positive integers. Okay. And similarly, you will have the notion of monotone decreasing sequences. So a sequence xn is monotone decreasing if its nth term is greater than equal to the n plus 1th term for all n. That is xn plus 1 is less than or equal to xn for all n positive integers. So here the sequence will look like x1 greater than equal to x2 greater than equal to x3 greater than equal to x4, and so on. And again, precisely it should be called monotonically non-increasing, because at any particular stage the sequence does not increase. It remains, the terms values remains the same, or they decrease. So it doesn't increase, that is what you're saying here. But we would be using monotonically decreasing for such a sequence. And when the inequality is strict, that is if xn plus 1 is less than xn for all positive integers n, then we say that the sequence is strictly monotonically decreasing. Okay, so notice that when if you have a monotonically increasing sequence, then it is bounded below by x1, because uh, the way you are getting your sequence is x1 less than or equal to x2 less than or equal to x3, and so on. So x1 is the least of the values of the terms. So therefore a monotonically increasing sequence is always bounded below. Similarly, a monotonically decreasing sequence is always bounded above by x1, because the sequence looks like x1 greater than equal to x2 greater than equal to x3, and so on. So it is always bounded above by x1. So depending on what happens at the other end, you can say something about the convergence of a monotonic sequence. That is what we would like to uh, show in the next results. And I have just mentioned one thing, that instead of monotonically, we may sometimes use monotone, and we may also sometimes use monotonic. So they are all the same things. Depending on the syntax, we will decide as to which particular term we want to use. It will not affect much. Okay, so as I said, if you have a monotonically increasing sequence, then it is always bounded below by x1. So in my theorem, I have used the notation Sn. So let me say Sn. So suppose I have Sn a monotonically increasing sequence. then it is always bounded below. Okay, fine. What happens whether it is bounded above or not, depending on that we are going to say now. So it may be bounded above or it may not be bounded above. If it is bounded above, this is the first result, then the monotonic sequence, monotonically increasing sequence is convergent. So let us say it again, a monotonically increasing bounded above sequence is convergent. And not only that, it converges to its least upper bound. So this is a very crucial result. So let us try to prove it. Suppose Sn is your monotonically increasing bounded above sequence. So since, what do you mean by bounded above sequence? That the underlying set of this sequence is bounded above. And by the supremum of this sequence, we mean the supremum of that set. So let us denote that by little s. So little s is the supremum of Sn where n varies over the set of integers. That is, it is the supremum of the sequence Sn. This notation I am using for the first time for this course, but this is a very useful notation because it tells you the same thing in using lesser number of mathematical formula, and also it looks very sophisticated. Okay, so S is supremum of the set Sn where n belongs to the set of integers. The point is that when you're talking about a sequence, some of the values may remain the same, as you have seen many times in the last few lectures. So therefore we are keeping that in mind whenever we are saying some such thing. We just mean the underlying set. Let me not repeat it again and again. I think by now you have understood what is meant by a sequence and its underlying set. Okay, see here I have used this notation. Point is that there may be some Sn's which are equal to Sn plus 1, say for example, and so on, because all you are asking for is monotone increasing. So you don't have a strictly monotone increasing or anything like that. So this set may have a repetition of certain number of terms, which is not desirable in a set, as we say. So here we are writing it with the understanding that whenever there is a repetition, we just drop that out. Okay, so enough of that. So suppose S is the supremum of Sn, where Sn is the monotonically increasing bounded above sequence given. Then we wish to show that Sn is a convergent sequence converging to S. So the way to do is by choosing a arbitrary small epsilon greater than 0, and then showing that there is after a certain term, all the terms of the sequence will lie in the epsilon neighborhood of S. So let us see how to do it. First of all, S is the supremum of Sn, means that if you decrease S by epsilon amount, that is, if you consider S minus epsilon, which is a smaller number than S, then it can no longer be an upper bound of this set, because S is the least upper bound. So S minus epsilon is no longer an upper bound. So there will be an element of this set which will be greater than S minus epsilon. Okay. So this statement we are making from the fact that S is the supremum of Sn. Now what can we say? We also know that the sequence is monotonically increasing. So if you take any little n greater than equal to capital N, then S little n is going to be greater than equal to S capital N, because monotonically increasing means that at every stage, remember your first definition, at every stage nth term is going to be less than or equal to n plus 1th term. So here what will happen is S capital N will be less than or equal to S capital N plus 1, that will be less than or equal to S capital N plus 2, and so on. So if you take any little n greater than equal to capital N, then it will be greater than equal to S capital N. Sn will be greater than equal to S capital N. And S capital N has the property that it is the element of this set which is greater than S minus epsilon. So by transitivity property, what follows is that S little n will be greater than S minus epsilon for all little n greater than equal to capital N. This is where monotonically increasing is playing a big role. I hope it is all right, since Sn is greater than equal to S capital N. For all little n greater than equal to capital N, we get this. Okay. On the other hand, if you take any positive integer n, then you notice that little s is the least upper bound. So it is at least an upper bound of the set. That means what? That s little n is going to be less than or equal to s for every positive integer n. So Sn is less than or equal to S, and S is clearly less than S plus epsilon because epsilon is positive. So what do you get if you combine these two statements? You get that if you take a little n greater than equal to capital N, then S little n will be greater than S minus epsilon, and it will be less than S plus epsilon. So given any epsilon greater than 0, you have been able to find a capital N positive integer, so that for every term greater than equal to the, for every little n greater than equal to capital N, that is for every term after the capital Nth term, the term will lie in the epsilon neighborhood of little s. Therefore, the sequence converges to S. That is your result. Here there is a typo. There should be only one F. So please keep that in mind. Therefore has only one F. Okay. So what have you proved? You proved that a very straightforward and simple proof, and it tells you that a monotonically increasing bounded above sequence is convergent and converges to its least upper bound. So now the next question is, what happens if you take a monotonically increasing sequence which is unbounded above? Then also you can make a very concrete fact that it has to be properly divergent to infinity. So let us see how will we prove that. So you take a monotonically increasing sequence which is unbounded above, call that little sn. Then we want to show that it is diverging to infinity. So for that, what you will have to do, you take any positive number k. Now Sn is unbounded above means its underlying set is unbounded above. So you will be able to get a S capital N, so that S capital N is greater than k because it is unbounded above. Now again use the fact that the sequence is monotonically increasing. So S capital N is greater than k means that if you take S little n, where little n is greater than equal to capital N, then that will be greater than equal to S capital N, and so it will be greater than k. Is this okay? Because since it is a monotonically increasing sequence, S capital N plus 1 is greater than S capital or equal to S capital N. S capital N plus 2 is greater than equal to S capital N plus 1, and hence greater than equal to S capital N. S capital N plus 3 is greater than equal to S capital N plus 2, and hence greater than S capital N. So actually for every little n greater than equal to capital N, S little n is greater than equal to S capital N. This is because the sequence is monotonically increasing, and S capital N has the property that it is greater than k. So what are you showing? You are showing that after the capital Nth term, every term of the sequence is going to be greater than k, where k is any positive number. So for any positive number, you have been able to find a capital N, a positive integer, so that for every term of the sequence after the capital Nth term, the terms of the sequence is going to be greater than k. That is the definition of a sequence diverging to infinity. So therefore, a monotonically increasing unbounded above sequence diverges to infinity. So what have you seen? You have seen that if you look at a monotonically increasing sequence, it has a very good behavior as regards to convergence. Either when it is bounded above, then it will be a convergent sequence and will converge to the supremum, or when it is unbounded above, then it will diverge to infinity. So similarly, using similar types of argument, you can immediately prove and this is going to be a part of your assignment, that if you look at a monotonically decreasing sequence, then a monotonically decreasing sequence, I told you, is always bounded above. So the question is whether it is bounded below or not. If it is bounded below, then it will be convergent and it will converge to its greatest lower bound. The proof is similar. And if it is unbounded below, then it will diverge to minus infinity. So it is either convergent or it is properly divergent to minus infinity. So if you have a monotone sequence, it will never be an oscillatory sequence. It is either going to be a convergent sequence or it is going to be a properly divergent sequence. So this is an exercise to you people as an assignment. Okay, so let us look at some examples. The first example is what I had been hinting in the previous lecture. So it is the first step of that. Let us look at the sequence xn, which is equal to 1 plus 1 by 1 factorial plus 1 by 2 factorial plus etc. plus 1 by n factorial for every positive integer n. So what is this sequence? You look at it carefully. What is x1? X1 is going to be 1 plus 1 by 1 factorial, right? You have to end at n factorial. So x1 is just 2. X2 is what? You look at x1 and then add 1 by 2 factorial to that. X3 is what? You look at x2 and then add 1 by 3 factorial to that. So what is in general xn plus 1? Xn plus 1 is going to be xn plus 1 by n plus 1 factorial. So you see that at each stage you are adding up a positive number to the previous term of the sequence to get the next term of the sequence. Therefore, it is clearly a monotonically increasing sequence. In fact, it is a strictly monotone increasing sequence because you are adding a positive number at each level. Also, x1 is equal to 2, so this sequence is bounded below by 2. No problems with that. Now we wish to show that it is also bounded above. If we can show that, then that will mean that this sequence is convergent by what we have proved just now. So let us see. Look at your xn. So it is 1 plus 1. We let it be as it is. And then half. The half also we let it remain. Then after that I have a 1 by 3 factorial. So what is 1 by 3 factorial? That is 1 by 2 into 3. So that is clearly less than 1 by 2 into 2 because 1/3 is less than half. So 1 by 2 into 3, or rather 1 by 3 factorial, is going to be less than 1 by 2 squared. So if I replace 1 by 3 factorial by 1 by 2 square, I'll get a number which is greater than xn. Again, we'll do this for all. So in general, I will have a 1 by j factorial here. So what does somewhere in between? So that means 1 by 1 into 2 into 3 into 4 into etc. till j. So first 2 you let it be as it is. Then instead of 3 you write a 2 again. Instead of 4 you write a 2 again, and so on till j you write 2 again. So what will you get? You will get 2 to the power j minus 1 total, because the first one was 1. See, 1 by j factorial. So j factorial means 1 into 2 into 3 etc. till j. So 1 if you don't count and 2 also if you don't count, and how many terms are there in the product? There are j minus 2 numbers. 3, 4, 5, 6 and so on till j. There are j minus 2 numbers, and every number you are replacing by 2. So you are getting 2 to the power j minus 2, and there is 1 2 in the beginning, so you are getting 2 to the power j minus 1. And by replacing like this, what are you getting? You are getting that 1 by j factorial becomes less than 1 by 2 to the power j minus 1. So if you replace each of these like that, what do you get? You get xn becomes less than, and strictly less than, 1 plus 1 plus half plus 1 by 2 squared plus 1 by 2 cube and so on till 1 by 2 to the power n minus 1. Now you notice, what is this? this is just, if you leave out the first one, you write it just 1 plus and look at it from here. So this is a geometric progression with common ratio half, right? So it starts with half to the power 0 plus half to the power 1 plus half to the power 2 and so on till half to the power 2 to the power half to the power n minus 1. So what is this sum is equal to? This sum is equal to 1 minus 1 by 2 to the power n divided by 1 minus half. This is a general formula which I think you have seen in your higher secondary, but even if you have not, it does not matter. Just verify. How will you verify? You forgot about this one, right? This is just repeated, so you can forget about 1 plus. So you just multiply 1 minus half with this whole thing. So if you multiply by 1, you will get 1 plus half plus 1 by 2 squared plus etc. plus 1 by 2 to the power n minus 1. And when you multiply by minus half, you will start with minus half here, right? So minus half minus 1 by 2 squared minus 1 by 2 cube minus etc. minus 1 by 2 to the power n. So everything will cancel out. Only thing which will remain is 1 from the first multiplication and 1 minus of 1 by 2 to the power n from the second one. So this numerator is equal to denominator into 1 plus half plus etc. plus 1 by 2 to the power n minus 1. So from there you are getting the formula. As simple as that. Okay. So what is this equal to? 1 minus half is half. So half is in the denominator. It becomes 2 in the numerator. So this is equal to 1 plus 2 into 1 minus 1 by 2 to the power n. Now what is 1 minus 1 by 2 to the power n? This number is strictly less than 1. So 1 plus 2 into 1 minus 1 by 2 to the power n is going to be strictly less than 1 plus 2. That is less than 3. So what have you got? You have got that for any positive integer n, xn is less than 3. Therefore, you have a strictly monotone increasing sequence which is bounded above by 3. So it is clearly going to be convergent. And where will it converge? It will converge to its supremum. So the supremum of this sequence is denoted by little e and called the Euler's number. And we know that E is then going to be equal to limit n tending to infinity 1 plus 1 by 1 factorial plus 1 by 2 factorial plus etc. plus 1 by n factorial. So this is the definition of the Euler's number, one definition. Okay, we will see another after a few more lectures. So let us look at another example. So suppose you consider the sequence xn where xn is equal to 1 plus 1 by n to the power n for all n positive integers. So first of all, notice that xn is at least greater than 0. They are all positive numbers. And what is x1? x1 is 1 plus 1 to the power 1. So that is x1 is just 2. So what I have done is that I have first shown that xn is less than 3 and then I will show that it is monotonically increasing. Okay. So let me see. I have started with n greater than 2. So let me tell you what happens at x1 and x2. x1 we already checked, it is equal to 2. So 2 is less than 3. No problems with that. What is x2? x2 is 1 plus half whole squared. So let us calculate. That is not difficult. 1 plus half is 3 by 2. So 3 by 2 whole squared is 9 by 4, right? So 9 by 4 is less than 3 because 9 is less than 12. So at least x2 is also less than 3. We don't have any problem with that. So x1 is less than 3 and x2 is less than 3. Now we want to know what happens about xn in general for n greater than 2. That is for n equal to 3, 4, etc. So let us try to work out. So first thing which I do is that I expand xn by the binomial expansion. So remember, this is just 1 plus something to the power n. So if you write down the binomial expansion, it becomes summation j is equal to 0 to n choose j 1 to the power n minus j and this something to the power j, right? So if you write it carefully, here what will it become? First term is n choose 0. N choose 0, 1 to the power n, 1 by n to the power 0. N choose 0 is how much? N factorial divided by 0 factorial into n minus 0 factorial. 0 factorial is 1. So n factorial will cancel out, so that only 1 will remain. And 1 to the power n is also 1. And 1 by n to the power 0 is 1. So all you are left out with 1. Okay. So what happens after that? After that, you get summation j is equal to 1 to n choose j, general formula I'm writing, n choose j, 1 to the power n minus j, so that is 1, into 1 by n to the power j, so that is 1 by n to the power j. So I have not written 1 to the power n minus j, because it is just 1. 1 into something is that something itself. So we have omitted that. Now look at it here. I'm just going a bit slow because if you have forgotten what is n choose j, you can see the formula is staring at you now. This is n choose j. N choose j is n factorial divided by j factorial into n minus j factorial. And what is n factorial? That is 1 into 2 into 3 till n. Similarly, the other ones. So now what you do is, you first of all, you cancel out n minus j factorial from n factorial, because n factorial will look like what? It is 1, 2, etc. till n, and n minus j factorial is what? It is 1, 2, etc. till n minus j. So if you cancel that out, in the numerator, you are left out with n minus j plus 1, n minus j plus 2, and so on till n. This is okay. And in the denominator, here you are left out with j factorial, and here you are left out with, this is multiplied by 1 by n to the power j. So now what you do is that you just rearrange and put a write this as a fraction. Okay, so n to the power j you write here, and 1 by j factorial you write it separately. That is not a big deal, so you have done that. Okay, now you see what is happening. When j is equal to 1 in this particular sum, then see here, if you put j is equal to 1, minus 1 plus 1 cancels out. So it will be only n on the top and in the numerator, and the denominator will be n to the power 1. So that will also be n. So that cancels out. And you're left out with 1 by 1 factorial. So that is only 1. So you will get just 1. So you write down 1 plus 1 plus the rest of the terms from summation j is equal to 2 to n. You have these terms. Now if you look at these terms, what is happening? 1 by j factorial, you let it remain as it is. So let us see how many terms are there in the numerator. In the numerator, you have n minus j plus 1, n minus j plus 2, etc. till how much? N minus j plus j. So because n can be written as n minus j plus j. So you started with plus 1 and you are ending with plus j, right? N minus j plus 1, n minus j plus 2, etc. n minus j plus j. So there are j terms in the numerator and there are j terms in the denominator. So you just divide each j term in the numerator by an n. So you have one n for each of them. You use that. So n by n will cancel out. It will become 1. Then you have the previous one is n minus 1. So n minus 1 by n is 1 minus 1 by n, right? N minus 1 by n. And so on, you go on doing. So I'm just doing it in the reverse fashion. So you will get n minus j plus 1 divided by n becomes 1 minus j minus 1 divided by n. This is okay. Minus of j minus 1 is minus j plus 1. So this is what you will be left with after you do this simple algebra here. Okay. So now you look at what do you have in this each term of this sum. 1 minus 1 by n is less than 1, 1 minus 2 by n is less than 1, etc. 1 minus j minus 1 by n is less than 1, right? So all these products are numbers less than 1. So therefore, if you replace them by 1, your number increases. So this becomes strictly less than 1 plus 1 plus summation j is equal to 2 to n 1 by j factorial. Okay, because each of these is less than 1. Now you use the same formula which we used for the previous example. 1 by j factorial is less than 1 by 2 to the power j minus 1. Right? This is the formula which we used. You replace each of the 3, 4, etc. by 2, then you will get 1 by j factorial is less than 1 by 2 to the power j minus 1. So this number, see, you are not doing anything about 1 and 1, the first two additions. Only the terms after, in the sum j is equal to 2 to n, you are replacing by larger and larger numbers. So it becomes greater than that. So it becomes less than 1 plus 1 plus summation j is equal to 2 to n, 1 by 2 to the power j minus 1. Now you use the fact that this 1 plus summation j is equal to 2 to n, 1 by 2 to the power j minus 1, that is equal to, as we did in the previous example, 1 plus 2 times 1 minus 1 by 2 to the power n, right? Use this formula and you will get this. So this is the same as in the previous example. So it becomes less than 3. So you get that each xn is less than 3. So at least the sequence xn is bounded above. This much is clear. Also, it is monotone increasing. In fact, it is strictly monotone increasing. So let us show that. If you look at xn, we have already seen, we had reached this formula, right? So let us start from this one. So xn is equal to 1 plus 1 plus summation j is equal to 2 to n, 1 by j factorial, 1 minus 1 by n, etc., 1 minus j minus 1 by n. This is what you had got. Now what you do is that look at each of these terms. So 1 by n is greater than 1 by n plus 1. So minus 1 by n is less than minus 1 by n plus 1. So 1 minus 1 by n is less than 1 minus 1 by n plus 1. This is okay. So this you do for each of these. The numerator is not going to be a factor, right? Whatever be your, suppose you take any k by n somewhere here. So since 1 by n plus 1 is less than 1 by n, so minus of 1 by n is less than minus of 1 by n plus 1. So if you multiply by a positive, these are all positive numbers. So multiply by a positive number k, then you still get minus k by n is less than minus k by n plus 1. And then you add a 1, you will get 1 minus k by n is less than 1 minus k by n plus 1. So this is perfectly all right, that if you are replacing this by denominator is replaced by n, you replace by n plus 1, then the numbers become greater. So you will surely get this. And you also add one more term to it. So it is from j is equal to 2 to n. You can see this. And you also add 1 by n plus 1 factorial, 1 minus 1 by n plus 1, etc., 1 minus n by n plus 1. See, where is it going to end? It is going to end at j is equal to n. So that there you will get 1 minus 1 by n plus 1, etc., 1 minus n minus 1 by n plus 1. Now you are adding another term, that is 1 by n plus 1 factorial. So here it was 1 by n factorial. Now you are adding n plus 1 factorial and similar, and these terms. So doesn't this look the same as this, except that we could have written this together, and we could have written it as 1 plus 1 plus summation j is equal to 2 to n plus 1, 1 by j factorial, 1 minus 1 by n plus 1, etc., 1 minus j minus 1 by n plus 1, right? So here the summation becomes from 2 to n plus 1 if you include this here. So that is the formula for xn plus 1, because you have proved that this is the formula for xn for any positive integer n. So this is the formula for xn plus 1. So what have you proved? You have proved that xn is strictly less than xn plus 1. So in fact, this sequence which you had is a strictly monotone increasing sequence, and it is bounded above by 3, and it is also bounded below by 2 now. That is easy to see because x1 is 2 and it is a strictly monotone increasing sequence. So the sequence looks, at least its nature is quite similar to the previous one, but we don't know whether it converges to the same limit or not. That we don't know. And we have not given any name to the what is the limit going to be? The reason is not extraordinary. The reason is that actually it will also converge to E, which we will show after a few uh, lectures. Okay, so the next result is the nested interval theorem, which is very much dependent on the behavior of monotone sequences. What is it telling you? That suppose you have a sequence of closed and bounded intervals such that In is a subset of In minus 1 for all positive integers greater than equal to 2. That means what? That I2 is a subset of I1, I3 is a subset of I2, and I4 is a subset of I3 and so on. So you have this big interval I1, but however big it is a closed and bounded interval, I2 is sitting inside that, I3 is sitting inside that, and so on. And not only that, if you look at the sequence of its length of the intervals, then that is a null sequence. Limit n tending to infinity mod In is equal to 0, where mod In means the length of In. So if this is given that you have a sequence of closed and bounded intervals so that each subsequent interval is a subset of the previous one, then you say that the sequence is a nested sequence of closed and bounded intervals. This one is nested inside the other. And if you require that the length of the intervals tend to 0 as n tends to infinity, then you can show that the intersection of all these ions is going to be a singleton, that is a set containing only one element. So to understand the proof, all we need to really do is give the names to these sequences, these intervals. So suppose In is equal to closed interval An to Bn. That is what they have said, right? You need a closed and bounded interval In and a sequence of such intervals. So let In be equal to closed interval A1 An to Bn. Then what do you know? That In is a subset of In minus 1, or the way I have written here, In plus 1 is a subset of In. So In plus 1, what will be the end points? An plus 1 and Bn plus 1. And close interval An plus 1 to Bn plus 1 is a subset of close interval An to Bn, means An is less than or equal to An plus 1, right? Anything between An plus 1 and Bn plus 1, inclusive of An plus 1 and Bn plus 1, has to belong to the closed interval An to Bn. So automatically An plus 1 has to be greater than equal to An, and Bn plus 1 has to be less than or equal to Bn. So this is the meaning of In plus 1 is a subset of In. And you have that this is true for all n. So you have, it starts with A1, B1, right? So the everything is sitting inside the closed interval A1 to B1. So you have this type of set of inequalities. So what is this telling you? You can easily see what is happening here is that actually there will be some dots in between also, but at least A1s are monotonically increasing, right? And BNs are monotonically decreasing. That is clear. And A1s are monotonically increasing and they are bounded above by B1. Nothing will go beyond B1. Similarly, B1s are monotonically decreasing and they are bounded below by A1. Nothing will be less than A1 because of this nested hypothesis which you have put. So by what you learned just now, that you have a monotonically increasing sequence which is bounded above, that is the sequence An, and you also have a monotonically decreasing sequence which is bounded below, the sequence Bn. So the sequence An and the sequence Bn are both going to converge. So let us call the limit n tending to infinity An equal to A and limit n tending to infinity Bn to be equal to B. Then what can you say about uh, A and B? You can say several things. First of all, you notice that we have also this condition that limit n tending to infinity modulus In is equal to 0. So that means modulus In means what? That is the length of In. So limit n tending to infinity, length of In is how much? Bn minus An, right? In was An, close interval An to Bn. So length of In is Bn minus An. So this limit should go to 0. So that means what? Limit n tending to infinity Bn is equal to limit n tending to infinity An. Therefore, A is equal to B. Correct? So the first thing which you observe is this. Secondly, we also know that if you have a monotonically increasing sequence which is bounded above, then it converges to its least upper bound. So A is at least an upper bound of each of these ANs. Similarly, B is the greatest lower bound of all the BNs. So what do you have? It is at least a lower bound. So B is less than or equal to Bn for all n positive integer, and A is greater than or equal to An for all n positive integer n. So what do you get? You get that An is less than or equal to A, which is equal to B. You have already seen, less than or equal to Bn. So that means that A, which is equal to B, is an element of closed interval An Bn for all positive integers n. So therefore, A is an element of the total intersection of all theIns from 1 to infinity. I told you this expression means I1 intersection I2 intersection I3 etc. all of them. So you just use a short form like this to express that. Okay, so you're almost done. All you have to show is that this is the only element in the intersection. There will not be any other element. So how will you prove that? So we will prove this part by contradiction. So suppose there is, if possible, there is some A prime belonging to intersection n equal to 1 to infinity In for some A prime not equal to A. Then what do you have? For every positive integer n, you have A satisfying the property An less than or equal to A less than or equal to Bn. Also, An less than or equal to A prime less than or equal to Bn. So this second set of inequalities you multiply by minus 1, you get minus Bn less than or equal to minus A prime less than or equal to minus An. So then you add this and this together. What do you get? An minus Bn is less than or equal to A minus A prime is less than or equal to Bn minus An. So remember this, you treat Bn minus An as k. So this is the same as mod of A minus A prime is less than or equal to Bn minus A. Now, what is mod of A minus A prime? That is greater than 0 because A prime is not equal to A. The mod of A minus A prime is the distance between A and A prime, and that is going to be positive since they are two different numbers. So what do you get? You get that this sequence Bn minus An is going to be greater than or equal to A minus A prime. So if you take the limit n tending to infinity Bn minus An, that is clearly going to be greater than equal to modulus of A minus A prime. Why? Because this is a decreasing sequence, right? And this decreasing sequence is greater than equal to mod A minus A prime. Bn minus An is decreasing because your In is a subset of In minus 1 for all positive integers n greater than equal to 2. So Bn minus An is obviously going to be less than or equal to Bn minus 1 minus An minus 1 and so on. So this is a monotonically decreasing sequence and this is bounded below. So it will be convergent clearly, but it will converge where? To its greatest lower bound. But the greatest lower bound is going to be greater than equal to mod A minus A prime because this is a lower bound. So it can never be equal to, the limit cannot be 0. But that was your condition, that if you look at the sequence of length of the intervals, that should be a null sequence. So you have arrived at a contradiction, and hence the assumption that there is another point different from A in the intersection is false. Therefore, the intersection In is actually a singleton. So this was your nested interval theorem. We will just look at it a little bit more carefully by seeing that the various hypotheses which you put, the conditions which you put while proving the theorem were all necessary. The first one is that I want to say that the set intervals which we took, they should be closed is a necessary condition. Why? We will show that if we don't take closed sets, that then the result may not be true, even if you have bounded sequences whose length is tending to 0. So In is equal to open interval 0 to 1 by n. If you take this interval, then this is clearly bounded, and it is not closed. Its length is what? 1 by n. So that tends to 0. Therefore, everything else is satisfied except that In is not closed. And what is going to be the intersection of all of these intervals? Look at this diagram which we have drawn here. I1 is open interval 0 to 1, I2 is open interval 0 to half, right? And I3 is open interval 0 to 1/3, and so on. So we want to say that its intersection is empty. There is nothing in the intersection. So how will you prove that? If you take any x which has to belong to the intersection, at least it has to belong to each of the INs. So it has to be greater than 0. So take any x greater than 0. Then by Archimedean property, there is a positive integer n, so that nx is greater than 1. Right? And since nx is greater than 1, it means that x is greater than 1 by n. So if x becomes greater than 1 by n, then it cannot belong to In. So if it does not belong to one of the INs, it cannot belong to the intersection. So no positive number is going to belong to the intersection, and therefore the intersection In is empty. So this is one example. The next example shows that the condition of boundedness is also necessary. If you look at the intervals, close intervals n to infinity, where n is any positive integer, then what does the interval look like? It looks like 1 to infinity, then 2 to infinity, 3 to infinity, and so on. Right? So this is still nested. There is no question of its length of its intervals going to 0, because these are all unbounded intervals, and they are all closed. So what is the intersection of this? So if you want something to be in the intersection of all of these, see, 1 to infinity is the largest one. 2 to infinity is sitting inside that, 3 to infinity is sitting inside that, 4 to infinity is sitting inside that, and so on. So if you want something in the intersection, it should be at least greater than equal to 1. That is true. And if you take any x like this, then if you take any positive, if you look at 1, then apply the Archimedean property of real numbers, what will you get? That there will be a positive integer n, so that n will become greater than x. So if n becomes greater than x, then x cannot belong to close interval n to infinity, because the close interval n to infinity means all real numbers which are greater than equal to 1. But here x is becoming less than n. So x will not belong to In, so it will not belong to the intersection. So intersection is again becoming empty. So your condition of boundedness is also necessary. Okay. Next we see what happens if you don't assume that the length of these intervals is tending to 0 as n tends to infinity. So for that, you just look at this example. In is equal to -1 by n to 1 plus 1 by n for all n in n. So what does this look like? You see, what you are basically doing is you are fixing up -1 to 1, this close interval, and then you are decreasing by -1 by n and increasing 1 by 1 by n, right? So I1 is going to be what? -2 to +2, this close interval. I2 is going to be -3 by 2 to 3 by 2. I3 is going to be -4/3 to 4/3, and so on. Each of them will have -1 to 1 as a subset. It is clear, because -1 is greater than, strictly greater than -1 by n for any n, and 1 is strictly less than 1 plus 1 by n for any positive integer n. So -1 to 1, this portion is going to be a subset of In for all n. And therefore, if you look at the intersection, it will at least have -1 to 1, and therefore its intersection is not going to be a singleton. And what is missing out here is that it is a ions are all closed bounded intervals, and they are also nested. I2 is a subset of I1, I3 is a subset of I2, and so on. That is happening. But even then, the intersection is not a singleton, because when you look at the sequence of the length of the intervals, limit n tending to infinity mod in, then what is this going to look like? It looks like limit n tending to infinity. What is the length now? Compute 1 plus 1 by n minus of -1 minus 1 by n. So it becomes plus 2 plus 2 by n. So the length is 2 plus 2 by n of the interval in. So if you take limit as n tends to infinity, it becomes 2. So it is not a null sequence. That is the point. So this intersection will not be a singleton. And what I have done is that I have just carefully shown that if you take any x greater than 1, in the picture, see, if x is greater than 1, then it will not be in the one of the ions. If y is less than -1, then there will be an ion, so that y will not be in ion, so that the intersection is exactly equal to -1 to 1. So let us see this, and we will stop here, even though I had said that we will talk about Cauchy sequences also, but let us just make it a different short lecture. Otherwise, it is becoming a slightly heavy duty. So maybe we will stop here. So what are we going to say is that just take any x greater than 1, then x minus 1 is a positive number. So use Archimedean property. What do you get? You get there exists a positive integer n, so that n times x minus 1 is greater than 1. That means what? That x minus 1 is greater than 1 by n, that is x is greater than 1 plus 1 by n. So if x is greater than 1 plus 1 by n, then clearly it is not in in, right? So it cannot belong to the intersection. Similarly, if you look at y less than -1, then minus y minus 1, this is a positive number. And so by Archimedean property of real numbers, there is a positive integer n, so that n times minus y minus 1 is greater than 1. So what does this mean? This means minus y minus 1 is greater than 1 by n. So that means that minus y is greater than 1 plus 1 by n. So multiply throughout by -1, what do you get? Y is less than -1 minus 1 by n. So again, y has become less than -1 minus 1 by n. So it will be a different n depending on y, it doesn't matter. So y will not be in one of the ions. So y is also not in the intersection. So this is true that closed interval -1 to 1 is a subset of ion for all positive integers n, and anything which is greater than 1 cannot belong to at least one of the ions, and if any y is less than -1, then it cannot belong to at least one of the ions. So the intersection of ion as n goes from 1 to infinity is going to be exactly equal to closed interval -1 to 1. So I suppose, as you can see, we did not complete the lecture which I had planned, but I think Cauchy sequences are important enough to uh, guarantee a separate lecture in itself. So we will do that in the next lecture. We stop here.